This is Erica McIntarfer, the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. On Friday, August 1st, the July 2025 jobs report was released, and it was not great.
Economists are expecting 110,000 jobs added to the economy in the month of July, with the unemployment rate ticking higher to 4.2%. We're looking at markets this morning down 400 points on the Dow Industrials going into the number. The NASDAQ down about 200 going. 73,000 jobs. 73,000 jobs created in the month of July. Number just coming out.
And that's total.
That's a pretty soft number for a July. But the bigger story here were the revised jobs numbers for May and June.
The revisions, here's a biggie. The 2-month revision, minus 258,000. That is a biggie.
So the May jobs number, which was previously revised up from 139,000 to 144,000, was drastically revised down to 19,000. June was revised down from 147,000 to just 14,000. To make it make sense.
I know that is standard in what they do, but whether it was under the Biden administration or whether it's under this one, today's was 258,000 jobs. We talk about giving certainty to businesses and this economy. What kind of certainty is it to say?
Do you understand how the labor statistics surveys work?
Absolutely.
Well, then if you did,
so how are they off by that much?
Because they are doing surveys.
So why are the numbers so off? Because that's how surveys work, dummy. It should also be noted that during Erica McIntarfer's tenure as BLS commissioner, 10 out of 18 months have been revised down by more than 50,000 jobs. In other words, the numbers were very, very wrong. So President Trump did what he should have done on January 20th.
So you know what I did? I fired her.
Right.
And you know what? I did the right thing.
In my opinion, today's job numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad. But instead of simply saying that there was a lack of confidence in Commissioner McIntarfer's leadership, and then make that case by pointing out that the numbers have never been more inaccurate, the president made it political.
I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election.
If any government official going forward is presenting data or information you don't like, should they fear for their job?
I've always had a problem with these numbers. You know, I was thinking about it this morning. Before the numbers that came out, I said, who is the person that does these numbers? And then they gave me stats about before the election. I had a similar problem. I mean, she gave out numbers that were so good for the Democrats. It was like unbelievable.
So now the media gets to run with the narrative that Trump fired her for political purposes and then turn it up to 11.
Suppressing statisticians is a time-honored tool for leaders trying to solidify their power and stifle dissent. It's happened throughout history, most recently in Venezuela and Turkey, where presidents punished officials and economists who do not toe the party line. It has not been part of the American tradition, but late Friday, it happened here. President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after basically claiming she rigged July's employment report.
This is the kind of dictator 101 playbook, right? Questioning existence of empirical data, going after someone that gives you a statistic you don't like.
This is the stuff of democracies giving way to authoritarianism.
When he gets news he doesn't like, he needs someone to blame because he won't take the responsibility himself. And this is the action of a petulant child.
The president faces new questions about whether he'll tell Americans the truth about the state of the economy and more.
It's like we're getting very close to the end of being able to trust anything this government says, and I think that should really alarm people.
Oh, well, if politics grandma says we should be alarmed. So the White House went into cleanup mode, attempting to justify the firing by listing BLS inaccuracies under Erica McIntarfer. Again, this should have been done 6 months ago. Now, was she partisan? Maybe. I mean, over the last few years, Republicans, including myself, have been questioning the integrity of the numbers and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Here's the National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett, on the matter.
Look, the fact is that when the data are unreliable, when they keep being revised all over the place, then there are going to be people that wonder if there's a partisan pattern in the data. And so if you look back to just a year ago, for example, there was another massive revision from the BLS, almost 1 million jobs down, that said that the Joe Biden jobs record was a lot worse than people thought. And now we had a number that just came out. The actual number for the month wasn't so bad, but the 2 months before were revised down by more than had ever happened since 1968. If I were running the BLS and I had a number that was a huge politically important revision, the biggest since 1968, actually revisions should be smaller, right? Because computers are better and so on. I would have a really, really detailed report explaining why it happened so that everybody really trusted the data. We had this move, that move, that move. We had a bunch of people get their responses in late or something like that. And we didn't get that. We didn't get that. And so right now, people, Goldman Sachs, people on Wall Street are wondering, where did these revisions come from and why do they keep happening? They have this little black box that moves the numbers around and makes people wonder, sometimes with partisan patterns. And so I think what we need is a fresh set of eyes at the BLS, somebody who can clean this thing up.
And the main thing that needed to be addressed is the household survey response rate, which dropped from 82.3% in 2020 to 66.6% in 2025. Here's Wharton School's Jeremy Siegel on the matter.
First of all, I'm not going to let the BLS off the hook. I mean, you talk about how to fix it. Make these questionnaires mandatory and give them a time limit to fill it out. I think the response rate's down to 60%. I mean, that's unacceptable for the most important statistic that we have. It's almost like we're sending them out, fill it out when you can. We know you like to go to the beach in the summer, so it might be a little bit late. This is just not acceptable today. We need that response rate has to go up. And when you make the biggest mistake in 50 years, why? Why wasn't there an explanation?
So obviously, the Bureau of Labor Statistics needed new leadership. But will the Democrats trust a person that Trump picks to lead the agency now? The answer to that question will not surprise you. Ben Kesselman of the New York Times claims that there's no way that Erica McIntyre could have rigged the numbers because she doesn't produce the numbers.
Look, Dr. McIntyre wasn't the person producing these numbers, right? She's, the top of an agency that has, hundreds of professionals who do this work.
So the commissioner can't manipulate the data. But
I think that the risk is that somebody gets put in who is just going to try to give numbers that the president wants, and that undermines confidence. Frankly, even if the numbers remain good, there are going to be a lot of questions.
Right. Wait, so the commissioner can't rig the numbers, but there's concern that the new commissioner will rig the numbers. Got it.
I think most people have not absorbed just how dangerous it is, both to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and also, then what? To put in some sycophant who's going to give data that makes the president happy?
So the narrative from Democrats is that no matter who President Trump picks, the numbers will now be called into question because they're a Trump pick, which is ironic considering how inaccurate the numbers were under the previous commissioner who was a Biden pick.
I think this harms our credibility as a nation.
Did you have concerns, though, this same commissioner, under her watch last year, there was a downward revision in the Biden administration of 818,000 jobs. That's a significant number.
Yes.
Do you think
President Biden didn't fire her after the downward revision?
Well, President Biden never fired anyone over poor job performance, so that wasn't ever an option. So what Shannon Bream was referring to was the annual benchmark revision. In August 2024, it was reported that the preliminary estimate would be a downward revision of 818,000 jobs. In the end, the final number was off by negative 598,000, which is still a massive discrepancy. And to make sure that we're all on the same page, let me give a quick explainer about how these revisions work. And to do that, we'll go back to January 2024. First, there's the initial reading.
A stunning first jobs report of 2024. Dropping just minutes ago, it was much better than expected.
The first jobs report Jobs of 24 is out, and it is whopper 353,000.
The eye-opening new numbers tonight, employers adding 353,000 new jobs last month, much higher than expected.
Another surprising strong jobs report tonight. The economy adding 353,000 jobs in January, almost double expectations.
The American job market is surging, adding 353,000 jobs in January, nearly doubling what economists had predicted.
So again, the January 2024 number was 353,000. But then, over the next 2 months, there were revisions. In this case, January 2024 was downwardly revised to 229,000 and then revised back up to 256,000. Then, at the end of the year, there's the seasonal adjustment and the benchmark revision. So we started at 353,000 and ended up at 119,000, which means that the number for the month was ultimately off by minus 234,000.
Revisions happen. They happen under every president. They happened when he was president the first time. They happened under Biden. So the idea that revisions are inherently a problem is nonsensical.
The fact that there are revisions is not the problem. What Abby Phillip, professional wrong person, isn't addressing is the accuracy of those revisions. Take, for example, 2017. Comparing the initial numbers with the final revisions, the jobs numbers were only off by minus 54,000. In 2018, the numbers were underreported by 35,000. And in 2019, the job numbers were only off by minus 45,000. But then COVID happened, and the accuracy of the numbers suffered greatly. In 2020, the job numbers were off by minus 449,000. In 2021, they were underreported by nearly 1.4 million. And in 2022, they were off by minus 110,000. So we went from being off by only tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands and millions. But this was during the chaos of COVID, and I guess we can be forgiving. But after COVID, the accuracy didn't improve. In fact, it only got worse. In 2023, compared to the initial reading, the job numbers were off by minus 299,000. And under Commissioner McIntyre's leadership, when you compare the initial number with the latest revisions available, the numbers have been downwardly revised by 1,054,000 jobs. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an other large downward revision is on the horizon. Here's Chief Economist for the Heritage Foundation, E.J. Antoni, on the matter.
Just earlier this week, we got the quarterly business employment dynamics report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and sure enough, that showed that 2024 has another massive overestimation of the number of non-farm payrolls.
And currently, economists are estimating that downward revision could be in the range of 550,000 to 950,000.
So next year, when we get the annual benchmark report for that 12-month period from March to March, we're going to see another huge annual downward revision. And that's on top of the existing month-to-month downward revisions that we've already had and that we clearly continue to have.
But of course, everyone who is adverse to anything and everything that Donald Trump does are so blinded by TDS that they can't see the forest for the trees. They don't care about the inaccuracy of the data. Instead, they're really concerned that President Trump fired a woman who didn't do nothing.
If we don't like the numbers, we don't fire the messenger.
And if you don't like the jobs report numbers, fire the messenger. And Trump just fired the messenger. Why? Because he didn't like the results.
And if you don't like the message, I guess you can fire the messenger.
The president essentially firing the messenger.
Shooting the messenger.
Like, you give me bad news, I fire the messenger.
They're attacking the messengers.
And Trump disliked the numbers so much he shot the messenger.
Well, I mean, it's literally firing the messenger.
You know, you get bad data, you kill the messenger, right?
But Commissioner McIntyre was not a messenger. She was in charge of running the principal fact-finding agency for the federal government, and her department has been putting out inaccurate jobs numbers over the course of her entire tenure as commissioner.
The entire purchasing power of the United States is based on people believing that our system is sound and honest. And so if the notion that we are now questioning what the data is coming from the Department of Labor, that makes our dollar weaker and it makes goods for Americans more expensive.
So when a number is suddenly revised down by 90%, you're supposed to blindly trust that the system is sound and honest.
Don't ask questions.
The United States data collection in the economic range is the best in the world. We are the gold standard. And the importance of that is that every government official who's making policy choices, and I mean that at the federal level, but also at the state level, at the town level, can look at, here's where we've been, here's the direction it looks like the economy's going. Understand, Bureau of Labor Statistics does not interpret the data. They just report the numbers. You figure out what to do with it. And every business in America that's trying to figure out, where do I want to go next? What do I think the trends look like? This is what businesses do.
So Senator Pocahontas claims that BLS data is super important, yet shows no concern whatsoever about the Bureau's massive downward jobs revisions over the last few years. Why? Because the big fake headline jobs numbers were largely benefiting Democrats during the Biden presidency. And now, these surprise massive downward revisions are hurting President Trump and the Republicans, and you wouldn't want to get in the way of that. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.